President Barack Obama.
Virginia, we are counting on you. Republicans want to steal enough seats in Congress to rig the next election and wield unchecked power for 2 more years. But you can stop them by voting yes by April 21st. Help put our elections back on a level playing field and let voters decide, not politicians. Vote yes by April 21st.
Paid for by Virginians for Fair Elections.
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many
discount.
discounts will you stack up? Tap the banner or visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
Order the double cheese and sausage.
Right here, dude. Here, dude.
Am I hallucinating here? Just what in the hell do you think you're doing?
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Mr. Spicoli, you're on dangerous ground here. You're causing a major disturbance on my time.
You know, I've been thinking about this, Mr. Han. If I'm here and you're here, doesn't that make it our time? Certainly there's nothing wrong with a little feast on our time.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Spicoli. It is our time. Yours, mine, and everyone else's in this room. But it is my class. Hamilton, Brandt, Kornfeld, up front. Mr. Spicoli has been kind enough to bring us a snack. Be my guest. Help yourselves. Get a good one.
Hi, I'm Sydney Sherwood, and I'm talking to Jay Scott on the Hook podcast.
Tell me, baby, oh, what do you want? Let's head down there to the water, honey, and do the things that we both want to. Oh, now, child. Oh, take me down there, low to the riverside. Holding on to the dock. I've been holding on too tight, and now I'm watching your red tail lights disappear over the hill. Take me down, 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 baby, till I hit the ground. Take me down, 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 baby, till I hit the ground. Lady gonna be right back, oh baby, right back, oh. Rest between your legs too tight, and you gotta look. You've been shooting at me out the corner of your eye, mama.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's another day. It's another podcast episode for the Hook Rocks, the ultimate rock community podcast. I'm your host, Jay Scott. Hope you're staying safe, staying healthy, warming up. It's springtime. Leaves are starting to grow. Grass is starting to grow. It is the weather, or the bad weather, I think, is behind us. Although sometimes here in Chicago, we get a false sense of spring where it warms up for like a week and then we get like snow first week of April. So we're supposed to get some light snow here on Friday when this is being recorded, which is, I think, the 26th of March. So hopefully that's the end of it, and then we can move forward and finally enjoy some good weather and get out and about, because I know, as I've always said, you know, the COVID thing is still out there. The numbers are getting better. I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully we don't go backwards. Hopefully we continue forward so we're able to go see some live rock shows this spring, summer, and fall. I haven't been to a show in, gosh, it's been a year and a half, but I'm itching to go. So, but as always, we are the escape that you need. We do music interviews, music commentary. We talk about music 3-4 times a week. And I'm just happy that you have tuned in to listen to this episode, because we have another great guest, another great new artist from Texas. We have Mr. Justin Ross. What's going on, man? How are you?
Man, things are good. How are you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, man. You know, things are improving. You know, every time I look at the news, you know, it seems like, you know, the numbers are getting better and all that stuff. And there's starting to be shows booked, and hopefully it continues, man. Fingers are crossed. I hope it's not too early, but, you know, nonetheless, I think there is some positivity out there finally.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I heard today out in Dallas that they shut down 2 of the COVID units because the numbers have decreased so much down here. And so that was a little shocking, but I was like, well, you know, it feels like there is sunlight at the end of this thing. So I'm excited. I'm real excited.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Everybody is.
Yeah, no, to get back to some normalcy and to get back to what we all love to do, which is socialize with each other, go to ball games, go to football games, go to concerts, whatever. You know, I hope that is the norm again here in the next few months. But time will tell, right?
Yes, it will. That it will.
Well, we always start the podcast the same way every time we have a new guest, and it is the essence of the show. Just like every rock song has a hook that sucks you in, every rock fan has a moment, whether it's a song, an album, a band, or performance that hooked them on rock and roll. What was it for you?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I started playing when I was 6. Man, I got... my mom was a blues gospel singer, and my dad was a blues rock and roll player from Kansas City. And so I was stuck right in the middle between 2 families of music. And it's kind of like one of those things where if you don't pick up an instrument and do something, you are going to be the outcast kind of deal. And so I chose guitar, and then I fell in love with blues rock and roll just down in I can remember my grandfather in their basement in Kansas City just had a slew of old records, Muddy Waters, B.B. King, you know, Clapton, just a ton of stuff down there. And as a child, I was going on there and listening to these records and was just like, man, I want to do that. And that was where it all stemmed from, I think. But I had already started playing guitar, but then that was where I was just like, oh my God. And then of course, when I came across bands like, you know, Zeppelin, etc., I was just like, oh, what is this? Well, you know, and that was my Disneyland, I guess, as a child, was going through all these records and stuff, and then just spawned, you know, trials and tribulations of playing in bands and what it is to play in a band and how to do it. And man, it's just been a crazy ride ever since 39 now. So there's no turning back at this point. So,
you know, rock and roll gets into your soul, you know, and I think more so than any other music. Like once it grabs you, it never lets go. You may wander off a little bit and you may go and listen to some other things as you're growing as a person, as you're doing things in life, but you always come back to it. Always.
Absolutely. I can definitely vouch for that. You know, for a while there, I was trying new things and playing different styles of music and getting involved in different styles of music. And at the end of the day, you know, after years of just experimenting with everything, at the end of the day, just a good old 3-piece rock and roll band was where I called home. And I can't escape it. That's what I do. It's what I love doing. You know, it makes you really happy on stage. The guys I play with are phenomenal. And, you know, you would think down here that you would see it all over the place, but you really don't. You know, you have a lot of singer-songwriters. You have a lot of country music. Now you do have your hip hop groups and, you know, stuff like that. And you have your metal market that's out here, but you don't see a really true to the roots, Southern rock band hardly anymore. You used to, and but you really don't see it anymore. And so for this record coming out, I thought, all through COVID, we kind of swam with the river instead of against it, and used the time and started laying these songs down, and taking the influences, Huey Lewis and the News kind of feel, to Stevie Ray Vaughan, to ZZ Top, Delbert McClinton, Bonnie Raitt, Derek Trucks, taking that vibe and putting it into something new, and not trying to reinvent the wheel, just having a good time. And it's been an absolute blast putting this record together.
You mentioned the blues as being a very early influence for you. And, me growing up in Chicago, I've mentioned this a lot here on the show about how, you're hearing the blues in the womb when you're in Chicago, right? And you're developing as a young kid. I mean, rock and roll was like the first distinct music that I fell in love with. But the blues was always in the background for me, right? At family parties, at barbecues, whether it was Otis Rush or Magic Sam or, Buddy Guy, you name it. It was always around in Chicago. I mean, I remember being 5 years old, 5 or 6, in watching the Blues Brothers for the first time. And that was really my introduction to the blues, because all those great blues players that are in that band, in that album, or in that movie. And, that was a gateway. And then, of course, later on when I went into like a blues rock thing, after I got discovered, I discovered Journey and Van Halen and all that stuff. Then I started getting into the Zeppelins and the Purples and all that stuff. And it's such a magical, simple music, right? The blues. And it's anyone who always, my son does this now because he's 16, and I forgive him for it because of his youth, but he always says all blues sounds the same, and I go, you haven't heard the blues yet. You haven't heard it.
I said the same thing when I was little, and my dad goes, you're listening to it, you're not hearing it.
Yeah.
And I never knew what that meant until, later on. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I sure wasn't.
I mean, there's a different approach, from every standpoint, right? I mean, they may play the same songs or sing about the same things, but the blues always comes from within. And each artist who's playing and singing the song has their own blues, right? They got their own blues that they're singing about or they're feeling, and they hit the strings differently. They sing it a little differently, and it's all different. I can tell, different players because I've been listening to it long enough, but I guess as a kid, it does, until you really understand it, until you really know where it's coming from, you do think that it all sounds the same.
Sure. And I think, too, the guitar player side of it was the wow factor for me. I'll never forget being a kid and watching, Stevie Ray at Austin City Limits, and watching him run a fretboard with one hand, and how just incredible that was the first time I saw it. And I was just like, oh my God, now it's like drinking water to do that. But back then, that was, I remember like hitting rewind on the VCR over and over. In fact, I still have that tape. We taped it off on live, TV, and there's a burn mark on several spots of that entire show where the tape is just beat to hell from me rewinding it over and over and over and over again to watch his hands, and it's pretty incredible, man. But it's also incredible to see, there's a lot of bands out today, Blackberry Smoke, Whiskey Myers from around here, to see how they're incorporating the rock side into blues and vice versa. And I'm a huge fan of that. A bigger band, Shaman's Harvest, there's another one. Lots of blues influence in that, but they're hard rock, and it's so good. And I think for a long time there, you weren't seeing the singer-songwriter combined with the lead player. You would see a singer-songwriter write songs, but he always had, he would find the best lead player he could. And it was rare that you would find both in one person. They were either one or the other. They were a good writer or they were a good guitar player. You didn't have both. And so that's what I wanted to try and do in my career, was be a good lead player and a good rhythm player and a good writer. And so that's how, down here, that's hard to find. I would love to come. I mean, I have dreamt about coming to Chicago and playing, for peanuts. I don't care what it's for, just to be able to get up there and play. But, I have not had that chance yet, and hopefully we will in the next year or two, so,
I still get excited when I'm, I go into my son's room because he plays guitar, and I go, listen to Buddy Guy, listen to this. And I'm like, no one bends a string like that. Nobody bends a string like Buddy Guy, Yeah. And I just get excited about that stuff. And then, we just had the Grammys here, what was it, last weekend or the weekend before? And, the Rock Award gets given out, to the Strokes, and their quote is that we don't need any more blues rock. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like what?
Yeah, you wouldn't be where you're at without it.
Well,
to say you don't need any more,
right,
is to say I'm cutting off everybody from the future of knowing what real music is.
Right.
In that genre. That's ridiculous.
Well, it also is, we talk a lot about the rock relevancy or the irrelevancy that rock has suffered under the last couple of decades, right? It's taken a backseat. It's not, rock is not dead. It's never going to die, but it's having a problem becoming or staying relevant. And, when I hear quotes like this, when I read quotes like this, I say to myself, the reason why rock is struggling is because everyone is trying to redefine it. Everyone is trying to say, this is rock. This is rock now. This is the new rock. Where it's
right.
Rock is what it is at its core. It's blues-based music. And if we celebrate more of that, rock will become relevant again. Instead of trying to run away from it, instead of trying to think that blues rock is some dirty word, it's not. I mean, you look at some of the bands that are coming through, some of the new bands, a lot of it is blues-based. I know Dirty Honey has a new album coming out in a couple weeks, and they're ready to jump through the stratosphere. You look at the last AC/DC album that was released in November, and that just resonated with everybody across the globe, all types of people, different generations. So don't tell me that blues rock needs to go away. I mean, that's just
no way.
It's just
no way in hell.
Yeah.
I hear people. I've been in this conversation before where we've talked about similar stuff, and then I look at the guy and go, well, like one guy in the room will be like, well, I don't really listen to rock. I listen to more R&B, and I go, think about what you just said. R&B. What does that stand for? That stands for rhythm and blues. R&B today would never have been around had there not been a Muddy Waters. Period. If there was never an Aretha Franklin, there would be none of these R&B female vocalists out there that are claiming to be R&B artists. It doesn't happen that way.
Right.
So you got to give respect where respect is due. And so that is where it came from, and rock. I mean, AC/DC even talks about how when they were writing songs, they took blues riffs and sped them up. That's how AC/DC was born. It was like, so you can't do away with it. And those that are going to fight it are only going to find a demise in their own comments. It's always going to be here. I was shocked when I was putting all these songs up to BMI, and then I was going through our distributor, Smith Music out of Fort Worth. When I was uploading the music for the single right back up, when I was putting that on there, I was you go into all your tags and stuff. You can, it's really cool how you can put all your musicians on there, they get points on the credits for being the bass player, the drummer, the sax player, the keys, etc. I thought that was really neat. But then I got to like the genres. And as I pulled up the genres, I was just trying to find rock and roll. And you said it a minute ago, people trying to claim like new rock, this is new rock, or this is rock and roll at, modern. Oh my gosh, the whole list was just like, well, what do you want to be? Metal rock, power rock, new rock, modern rock, 2000s rock? I was just like, what? Where did we cross a bridge that rock and roll had to be labeled? It was already called rock and roll. Leave it that way.
Right.
The times changed, not the name.
Well, I always laugh, too, whenever I see the nominations for the Grammys. And first of all, I don't want to put too much stock in the Grammys because rock and roll has never needed the Grammys. But what's funny is...
Good quote. Good call, man. That's awesome.
It's never needed. Yeah. And what always makes me laugh is when I see the rock nominees, and I'm like, none of these are rock acts. It's like, why are we trying to redefine what it is? It's not, I mean, none of this is rock. And of course, when rock and roll is so many things to so many people. And when someone tells me that it's not connecting with the youth, I get that. I understand that. But I also see my 16-year-old son and his friends listening to rock and roll, rock music. And I think it's coming back. And I sound like a broken record because I say this a lot, but when you have young people sitting at home for a year, not socializing, not living their life like they want to, not having fun, what happens? It builds up angst, it builds up aggravation, and they need an outlet. And they want to stop listening to the pop music or the stuff that they're listening to, and they want something that will connect with that anger and that angst. And what genre of music does that better than any other genre? And that's rock music. Oh, yeah. And that's why I think with all the new bands that are coming and being a part, and you being a part of new rock music and new music and where it's going to be everywhere where, it's kind of like the 80s, right? The 80s rock scene. Everyone's called hair metal, glam metal, whatever it was, however you want to define it. It was everywhere, in large part because MTV. And people didn't have a choice to just do away with it. They had to accept it. That's why the Grammys started having the Rock Award in the 80s, because a lot of they wanted to bring in young people for advertisers. That's why it was done that way. And now the Rock Awards are not even on television anymore, which who cares about whatever. But now it's very similar because there's so many new rock acts that are coming up that it's going to be everywhere. You're not going to be able to get away from it. And that's a good point because, so earlier I was saying like the bands here in Texas,
there are good, solid rock bands right here, Fort Worth. There's tons all over the state, but I just think about the city I live in, and I can name off 100 of them that are stout, good singer, good writer, good, like all the way around a good band, good rock and roll band. And the problem that we're facing is that you have this style of music that's coming in that is not really coming in. It's always been here. It's just that there's more bands bringing it back to life because it lay dormant for so long. And the radio stations, they don't know what to do. So you have for instance, last night I had to go to the Texas Regional Music Awards, Radio Music Awards, Texas Regional Radio Music Awards. And when I went in there, I picked up they have a little booklet. It's like a banquet deal, you sit down at the table and I open up the booklet and you see all the, who's up for awards and this, that. And as I'm looking through it, I'm like, first of all, when it came down to the artist, I had no clue who most of these folks were on there. I couldn't tell you anything about their music. Now in the room, you had guys like William Clark Green and Aaron Watson and, just a bunch of the big Texas country guys. So Americana radio in Texas 25 years ago was playing nothing but blues and rock and roll. Wasn't playing classic gold country music. It was playing rock and roll. And you would listen to those stations because you could hear Delbert, you can, like the whole list, you know, like you could hear everybody you want to hear. You want to hear ZZ Top, that's the station you listen to. Or you listen to Z-Rock, you know, you listen to a classic rock station. But this station stayed true to just the Americana artist. And then it switched over to Texas country. Like back in 2000, you know, around 99, 2000, it started switching over. So these stations are still Americana, but they're labeled as a Texas country music station, which I get the whole, you know, Nashville versus Texas and the country music scene. I see all that. I understand how it's vastly different. I mean, it's huge. There's a huge difference. But when you go see, I don't know, let's say Randy Rogers, for instance. When you go see Randy Rogers play a show, what you're hearing on the radio versus what you're about to go see in concert is two totally different things. You're hearing a country guy on the radio, then you're going to go see a rock show. And he's going to play that single as country as it gets on the from the radio live. He's going to play it like that. But then you're going to hear him do other songs, and it's just like a rock show. The amps are cranked, the distortion's up. You know, it's not Southern blues rock or anything like that. It's just a rock show. But you can't get them to do that on the radio. And so, even though in the radio world, it's hard to compete these days. I mean, the disc jockey is going away, where podcasts are going up, which is great because everyone has it right at their fingertips. You know, I have my playlist on my Spotify, and I'm going to listen to that while I'm driving down the road. I'm not going to turn it on the radio and listen anymore. But if I knew that there was a station that was local, that was supporting rock bands in the Americana genre or rock genre, whatever, from Texas, or just locals in general, stuff that I'm not going to find per se on Spotify, or if I want to be brought to new music, that's what I would go and listen to, you know? And so there's not really a place for it. When you get out of Texas and then you find out that places like Wyoming or Montana or Iowa, Kentucky, Indiana, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, South Carolina, very big out in the East. They're craving good rock bands. And I just, you know, I wish there was more down here, but I guess time is going to tell. But it's good to know that you're up in Chicago and you're feeling the same way. Because it's like, okay, so maybe my gut's right. Like rock is finally starting to come back. You know, thank God. You know, so it's a different deal, man. It's vastly different.
Yeah, I've really looked at it differently. I think a year to a year and a half ago, I was more about, oh man, you know, is you know, rock and roll going to be able to come back, and you know, will it be, you know, relevant again? And there's so much young bands, you know, out there. Now I'm like, it's almost inevitable that it's going to come back. It will.
It has to.
There's too much good music and there's too much talent out there in these new bands and artists to have it not come back. And, you know, and you can't tell me, you know, advertisers will determine, you know, this and that will determine. They've said that before. And whenever there's a big wave, whether it was like in the 70s or whether it was in the 80s and about to in the present day, they'll have no choice. They'll have no choice. And everyone has got new music coming out this year. I sit and I talk with my friends or with my son, and we start going through the list of people who are coming out with new albums this year. And we're just like, oh my God, you know, like you're not going to be able to get away from it. So I think it's just a matter of time. You know, it's going to happen. There's too much good music coming. There's too many new bands that are out there for it just to die or not do anything with it.
Right? No, I totally agree with you. I think we're watching it starting to evolve, you know, and I see younger guys. I see guys that are in their, 19, 20, 21, 22 that are playing it, and I hear it and go, oh man, that is so good. Like, you go out to some of these rock clubs that are around Fort Worth. There's not many. So it's a real tight knit group, but Jesus Christ, these kids are good. Yeah. Like, they're really good. And I'm just like, why is nobody listening to this? Here's a perfect example. Last summer, during COVID, there's a kind of a Texas best kept secret, and they did it full on. You sign a waiver to come in because it's like a mud rally fest, and it's called Rednecks with Paychecks. And when you say that name, people think immediately like, what in the hell is that? And is this all just a bunch of rednecks? Yes, it is. It's a bunch of rednecks. You can look it up on YouTube. Rednecks with Paychecks. In fact, they just did their spring festival this past week, and it is I don't know how to describe this. It is 10, 15,000 people that have monster trucks, all sorts of ATVs and stuff, and they do this big. It's in St. Joe, Texas, and they do this gigantic mud rally. They have races going. They've got just mud bogging, tractor pulls. They got this downhill thing they do with like Barbie cars, like the kids' cars, and it's who can make it all the way down the hill. Half naked women running all over the place. It's crazy. Now, for 15 years, they've been doing this. And every year, they do it twice a year. They do one in the fall. They do one in the spring. Or one in the spring, one in the fall. And so they've always had country acts play it. Always been country. And I have always said, this is a rock event. These people are out there just going nuts, lawlessly, just drinking their ass off, having a blast. Like, this is something that you want to put a rock band in this situation. And the owners, it's not that they didn't want to do it. I think they were a little intimidated to do that because maybe it would start too many fights or, something, because people are just like on a bender. But they put Texas country bands in there forever, for 15 years. And so we finally got asked last summer after playing a private party for all the owners of RWP. We played a private party, and they said, the owner there, Derek, said, one of the owners, he was like, do you want to play Rednecks with Paychecks this year? And I said, absolutely, yes. And so they put us on with two other bands. We were opening, and then it was Cody West and Stoney the Rude. Now, Stoney is widely known, huge name in Texas. Sells out Billy Bob's when he plays, 9,000 people. Like, he's up there. Cody West has a huge name as well, and he had just released a new record, and it was borderline like a 90s grunge record. I was like, in what world is this country? Like, how is that getting played? Because it literally sounds like a grungy, I don't know, Goo Goo Dolls kind of sound. And so they put us on before them. Well, when we found out that we were going to do that, we didn't hold back, and we did video after video after video talking about it, pushed the hell out of it for 2 months, and then got out there and did the show. And we in fact, I got the call today that we're still holding the record, but we set the record for the largest crowd ever in RWP history for a band. And you would have thought we were at Vans Warped Tour. There were people jumping on the stage, crowd surfing. Everybody was into it. There was no fights. There was no mosh pits. We're not that kind of band. It was just good, clean rock and roll concert. And they held for the entire time we played. And then after we got done, Cody came on, and the energy level went down, and the crowd dispersed, and then Stoney, it got all the way down to like 1,500 people. There was a little over 6,000 and a half, somewhere around there, people when we kicked off. And when we ended, there was probably 8,000 at the end. You know, it was nuts. And usually out there, an event like that, they don't want to come see the band. Like, a few of them will come see the band, but they're more interested in, and they got this thing they call Titty Row, and it's where all the, you know, big trucks and everything are driving down. All the girls are standing up there. It's kind of like Mardi Gras in a sense. People got beads and they're throwing them and this and that. So more people go to that than go watch the bands. And so what that told us, though, was that people are craving it. People are craving a good rock band to come out of the South. And we just hope what we're doing can fuel that. You know, maybe we're not the answer, but I'm not going to stop until I either can't play guitar anymore or I lose my vocals from singing. We'll see which one goes first. But I just feel like we're on the cusp. I feel like it's right there, you know, and with the reaction we're getting from the single is very nice. You know, it's very nice to know that around the world people are listening to this and loving it. So, I mean, it makes me really excited.
Well, let's get into that, because that's why you're on the show, right? Is to talk about your music and talk about what you're doing. And, you know, you come from Texas. Obviously, we've been talking about that. What has been the process leading up to this point for you in the new music?
So, went through quite a, you know, like I said before, dabbling in all sorts of stuff. And I have like two sides of this thing. Like, I have an acoustic show I do that I'm basically doing all my, you know, rock and roll on an acoustic. But I figured out back in like 2001, 2002, Line 6 made a pedal called the Line 6 DL4, and it had a loop station on it where you could do like 14-second loops. And you could record it live and then you could play it. And I was like, oh my God, well, if I can get a couple measures in here, I can play lead over this during an acoustic show. And so a lot of people know me for that, because now just in the last 2 years, you're seeing it really explode, where you got guys that are beatboxing and they're using loop stations, and you got guys on guitars. Ed Sheeran was a big player in this, but I've been doing it for, 20 years almost, you know? And so with that being said, it opened up a lot of doors in the acoustic world, thinking, you know, because I have fans for that. People like that more than they like the rock show. You're like, hey, I really like you on acoustic when it's just you and a guitar. And that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that, because I'm still playing the same songs that I'd be playing in the rock show. You're just getting another version of it. And so, you know, I had my metal days, and, you know, we had a band called SoCo for a long time. God, I think you could still down that record. It was spelled SOCOE, and we were all on drugs. It's a very interesting record. But we did that for a bit, and then I had Big Casino, which was great. And I think Big Casino was the part where it really started to finally mold together. And that was a big band, you know. That was I had drummer and bass player, keys, another guitar player, me on guitar and singing. It was just 5-piece band. Sometimes we'd have a horn section with us. And that was really, like, the songs were cool, but I felt like at the end of it, we were just putting way too much into it. We were overthinking it. And which leads to this now. And I started playing with another guy named Johnny Cooper in a band called Sidecar. And he does a bunch of loop station stuff. And so we put the two together, and he's got more of a real high-pitched voice. And he was real big in the Texas country scene for a long time when he was younger. He was like selling Billy Bobs out at like 14 years old. And he, you know, matured and grew up and said, I don't want to play country. I like rhythm and blues. I like pop. This is what I want to do. And so he's more the pop side of it, and I'm more the rock side of it. So we put the two together and created Sidecar. And we released an EP about 4 years ago, and you can find it on my Spotify. And so we've been doing that for a while. And then I finally decided, you know, I want to, something kept telling me in the back of the head, like, you got to play rock and roll. You got to play rock and roll. And I'm going to give him praise. So I had a show booked with Johnny to go out to San Angelo and play this venue out there. And Johnny got sick and couldn't make it. And so I didn't want to go out there by myself. It's a long drive. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to call my old drummer up. And I called Michael Fitch, and he hadn't been playing for a while because he was kind of going through some stuff. Brandon Jenkins, who he had been playing for a while, good friend of both of ours, had passed away, and it kind of sent him down a dark road. And so it had been a year since that happened. So I called Fitch and said, hey, man, do you want to come do an acoustic show with me tonight? I'm going to be playing out in San Angelo. I got us a hotel, blah, blah. We'll just crash out there and come back tomorrow. And he's like, you know what? Yeah, man, I do. And so him and I were kind of just BSing on the way out there. And he turned towards me in the truck and he goes, man, can I speak freely when we're pretty good friends? And I go, yeah. And he goes, stop what you're doing, man. You need to be playing rock and roll. You need a good Texas solid 3-piece rock band. Forget about the keys, forget about the organ, and forget about all the horn section and all like that. Just do you. I'll be your backbone. Let's get a solid bass player in here and let's just do this. And so it was like the thing I needed to hear. It's like that, you know, when you have it in your brain and you keep telling yourself that, but you organically need somebody else to tell you that. You don't need to search for it. Just, it's someone needs to say it. And he said it. And I said, man, I am so glad to hear you say that. Yes, let's do this. And I remember that night we played, we had such a great time, but I couldn't sleep at the hotel that night because I was so excited to just get home and start finding a bass player and get this ball rolling. And then that's when we brought in Ruben Salazar, who was playing for Austin Alsop, he's been playing for Austin forever. Alsop was actually on The Voice and all this stuff here recently, but he's been around forever. We've known each other forever. And I've known Ruben for a long time. We just never played with each other. And I called Chris Watson, another great player from here in Fort Worth, and I asked him, I was like, man, do you know any good solid bass players that be interested in playing some rock and roll? And he goes, man, Ruben Salazar is solid. You might want to give him a shot. So I did. So we put the band together, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. I introduced about 20 songs to everybody. Fitch kind of knew them already, and Ruben learned them. And then we just started tightening up so fast and so quick that I think all of us just realized, man, not only did I need to be doing this, but all three of us needed to be doing this, a long time ago. We should have done this a long time ago. And I say that, but maybe there's no time like the present. Maybe the cards fell when they should have fallen. Like right at this time is when it's time to do this, And so at the time, a couple of years ago, Leighton Autry and I had started building a recording studio at my house. And the idea was to build a recording studio for musicians, by musicians for musicians. Everything that you could think that a musician would want, we wanted to make sure that we had in a home setting so that you could be comfortable and you weren't getting charged out the ass for show, for recording, that kind of stuff. And so we made kind of an Airbnb thing about it. My wife was very cool about it. Well, when COVID happened, everything came to a halt. This time last year, I was getting phone calls and still canceling shows, and we had lost at that point like 197 shows for the year. And we were just kind of dead in the water. Well, instead of sitting there sulking about it, we swam with the river instead of against it and started working on this record. Here we have this recording studio. We have everything at our fingertips. We don't have to buy up time. Let's just get in here and start getting it done. And so we started recording songs. And at the end of the recording of them, we would mix them down. And if we weren't really happy with them, we just put them in a folder and moved on to the next one. And I think we recorded, on the list in here, it's 28 songs total, and ended up with 10 solid songs. And then 7 of those is making it to the new record. And then we're taking 5 of the big casino tunes and putting those on the record. So, and then we've got 3 acoustic songs that are going to go in there. So it'll be 15 songs total coming out in May. And then we started picking singles, and we released Dance With Me about 5 or 6 months ago. And then we released Break My Heart right after that, which is one of my favorites. Not a favorite of the crowd, it's just one of my favorites. Good tune, just straightforward as it gets. And we pulled Renee Azuna in to play sax on this, who's an accomplished sax player, 58 years old, incredible dude. In fact, when we pulled him into the studio to play sax on this, I asked him, I was kind of nervous because he's really well known around here. And I was like, hey, Renee, I've heard a lot about you. I know I've seen you play 100 times. I'd love for you to come play some sax on a couple of these tunes. You know, would you be interested? He goes, yeah, man, I'm totally interested. I said, you know, what's it going to cost me? I thought for sure he was going to be like a $500-$600 player for sure, like without a doubt. And he couldn't have said the more perfect thing to me. He goes, give me a couple $100 and have me a warm shot of whiskey when I get there. I go, what kind of whiskey? And he goes, Jameson. I was like, you got it. And he came in and he knocked right back up. He knocked that out in 2 takes, and he knocked Break My Heart in 1 take. And I was just, you know, all of this just started coming together, and the fun part was recording it, and then the even better part was getting to sit down and not have to be standing over a producer's shoulder, and not have to be standing over an engineer, but to be sitting in the room by myself in the comfort of my own home and going, this is the first time I get to produce engineer my own record, you know, after all these years, after all these albums. So I sat down and mixed and mastered this record, and just then I put it away. Like I Right Back Up got recorded back, so that would have been July, and I did it, listened to it, mixed it, mastered it, had the finals, everything done for it, and then I didn't listen to it until November, and was like, you know what, I'm just not going to listen to it. I don't want to hear it. I want to get it as far out of my head as possible off the record. We'll still play it live, but you know, I'm not gonna listen to that recording. And then it was like the night before Thanksgiving, and I had some family in, and I listened to it, and I was like, holy shit, that is so good. And then that's when I was like, okay, here's the songs we're releasing. And so Right Back Up is a song that lyrically is written about the girl at the bar that is the player. She picks the dude up, but she takes him for everything she's worth, takes him out, they get hot and heavy, she steals his car, leaves him high and dry there on the side of the road, goes on to the next bar to find the next victim. But then that dude that she took advantage of shows up at the bar, finds his car, goes inside and thinks to himself, you know what, it was worth it, I'll let her steal the car again, kind of deal. And how it just, she brought me all the way down to the ground, and then she picks me right back up, kind of deal. And it just made for a good lyrics. We were all joking about it when we were writing the lyrics, and then I was like, we should make it really aggressive, you know, tell me, baby, like just come on, like just real, hit it right in from the vote, like no guitar intro, let's just go straight vocal into the song. And then once we got in there and started playing it and started recording it, it all started coming alive. And then at the end of it, you know, we all agreed, like, man, that tune is just, it sounds good, and it shows. That's the song, man. I mean, people just start dancing, and people that don't even know how to dance are dancing.
When you write music, when you're writing music, where do you find your inspiration? Is it through observation? Is it through experience? You know, someone that you know is experiencing something. How do you find your motivation to write a song?
there was a really dark time there for a long time. And when I was a kid, my dad, who I looked up, he was my hero. And of course, he taught me how to play guitar. And he was always the guy that, he didn't matter how bad I was doing on the guitar. He'd come in and he'd tell me, yeah, you've almost got it. Let's try this, and then I'd slide my finger down one fret. I'd be, oh, there it is, And so he was always a good inspiration. So was my mom. But my dad ended up getting murdered when I was 16. And so for many years there, I had a very dark time in my life. And so it definitely affected my writing. Now, they don't tell you when you become a writer that, you're going to end up having to go through some shit to end up, excuse my French, but end up going through that to write. You're going to end up going through something. And a lot of people tell you like, oh, you got to find love and you got to lose it in order to, sing the blues. Well, that's not always true. Like I had plenty of love in my life, but I'd never really been affected by that part of it. It was losing a family member that, my dad, like, I mean, good God, one day we're eating dinner and the next day he's dead. It was like, there was no goodbye. There was no nothing. So that impacted my life tremendously when it came to writing. And it led to a slew of things, some horrible, some great, but some life lessons to be learned that made me, at the time, a terrible person. And on the back end of it, a much better person and a better man for it, and learned a lot from that. So when I write now, I think of things like that I see. So like, whether that be in a movie or if I see, I hear one of my friends tell me, what he's going through. In fact, we just wrote a song called Before the Breakdown, and it'll be on this next record. And it's a buddy of mine who's been touring as a solo artist in a truck. I mean, he literally has a piece of crap Ford F-150. He throws his guitar and PA in a camper shell in the back of it. Has a little bed next door to that in the bed of the truck. And he camps in it, and he goes and plays these dive bars all over the country as much as he can. And then he comes back home, and he's got an old lady there, and it was his girlfriend, and they were living together. Well, he came in off the road, and he was noticing that she was just kind of going downhill, and he couldn't figure out what was going on. She was hiding it from him, and it was basically just drugs and alcohol. But then he had like a slew of shows canceled during COVID. So he came home early and he was going to surprise her. And he got home, he found her in bed with another guy, and then realized that he loved her so much that he was willing to try and make things work. And she wasn't. She was ready to go. She just didn't know how to leave. And so he finally we left her and took all the stuff and moved out. And so we wrote a song about that. And I used that story because it's so impacting. It's like, man, this guy's out busting his ass, working, and comes home and she's just not a care in the world, just sleeping with some dude, and that's a story that all too much we hear about, whether it's a guy in music or doctors or lawyers or a guy in the oil field or a dude that works for the train, like it just,
is it tough for you? Is it tough for you tapping into stuff like that? Where you've got to observe it, feel it, write it, and then ultimately perform it.
It's the song. I have a song on my last record called "Weed for the Whiskey," and that one hits home pretty hard. Now I'm still with my wife, but at the time we were really going through some, like this was before we were married. We were going through some like really bad issues, and there was a point where, I woke up one morning, I came out, and there was a note on the table that said goodbye, and I could tell that she had like cried while she was doing it because there was like tear stains on the page. And that song, along with another song called Breathe, is still to this day hard for me to sing. It's hard because you have to put yourself in that place in order to sing that song, to get it to translate to people correctly. I could just get up there and sing it blindly with no emotion, or I could get up there and sing it with the emotion. And I try and put myself in it as I'm on stage. When I see that song's coming on the set list, I start thinking through my head and replaying that moment of waking up and finding that note and realizing that feeling that comes over you, and getting that all back again to play that song so that people understand. I didn't just, just didn't think this up and run. Like I lived through this, and it was a horrible, horrible time. It's a feeling that, everybody's going to have to feel loss at some point, but it's a feeling that we don't ever want to feel. It's that where it just rushes completely all the way through you, and you panic and you're stressed and your stomach turns in knots. You always wonder why when people break up, one of them loses a ton of weight. Well, it's because they're not eating. That's all they could think about. They're not doing anything. They're just shutting down. And that's kind of the, I remember that night I sat in a room in front of a fireplace and was playing my guitar, and I was just banging out every song I knew, and I was just taking it out on the guitar. And instead of, I didn't smoke weed at the time or now, but I did back then. And I, instead of smoking, I grabbed a bottle of whiskey and I literally just started chugging like I was in the movie. Like, what movie was that? Where you had the college shirt on? What was that? Animal House? Just chugging a bottle of Jack Daniels. That's what I was doing. And I remember sitting there and I put the bottle down on the floor and it kind of tilted over and spilled. And I was like trying to figure out, what do I do now? And there's a line in the song where I just spun the bottle and I was like, all right, man, you tell me. And I just spun it and it was like, go north. I was like, I'm going north. And that's what I did the next day, man. And, went up to Oklahoma and Kansas and started just kind of getting away from everything. And so, yeah, when I write, a lot of it does come from stuff that I've been through, and seen and been a part of. Take Me Back to Texas is a really one of my favorite songs, but is, I don't know how to say it. I love Texas to death. I love living here. I've grown up here, but I've been around the world, and there are some beautiful places that I'd much rather live. But at the end of life, when it comes, if I die before I get back to Texas, throw me in a box and just find a plot and bury me, or throw my ashes on somewhere in Texas, and that's what that song's talking about. If I die before my time, send me in a pine box, send me down on a night train, that kind of deal, get me home as quick as possible. I don't care where it's at in Texas, as long as it's in Texas. And, so in the writing part of it, the lyrics and the storyline, yeah, but at the same time, as a lead player, I try and have that emotion come through in the leads that I play. Take Me Back to Texas is very aggressive. So the lead in that song is extremely aggressive, very fast, a lot of finger work. But in Breathe, the way we're re-recording that song, because the way we did it on the last record was produced by another producer that will remain nameless, but it was not the way it should have been done. And the way we do it live now, people just lose their mind. And that's because there is a really soulful, well-written lead part in the middle of that song that if the lyrics and the chorus line is not the hook, then this thing definitely is. It's like having 3 hooks in one song. And, but I try and translate that into the lead playing as much as possible. And that just, there again, comes from the blues, because that's what the blues was about. They could B.B. King couldn't play and sing at the same time, but he could get his point across in 2 different ways. That and 58 children.
When you think about the music that you have and, the music that you're releasing here, and you think about the current landscape here in 2021, What are your thoughts on the future? Like, where do you see you going with this year?
I think it's going to be overseas. I think we got a lot of work to do to get things built up in the States, just judging from, like with Paige Gregory, working with her, and what we're dealing with in the marketing aspect of trying to get the music out there and who's accepting it and who's not. But overseas, we're getting a huge response, even in Canada, which is mind-blowing. But in Canada, we're getting a huge response. So, I go back to thinking about in fact, I called him and talked to him a little bit, but Joe Bonamassa, him and I talked about it, and he had kind of the same thing. Joe's been around forever, but he, on his last record, started doing kind of more blues rock versus traditional blues. And he started, what was that song? Mountain Climbing. He had come out. Oh my God, what a song. But he was struggling with it over here. He's always struggled with it over here. But in the UK or go to Australia, oh my God, that dude could sell out 30,000 people, and that's because they love it over there. And I think that's what's going to end up happening probably in the next year, as long as things continue to open and everybody's safe and everything's going good. I see touring overseas. I see going to Japan, Australia, China, the UK in general. I mean, I think that's where we're going to be. I think the East market of the United States is doing really well. So I think if we do tour in the States, at this point, what I'm seeing is probably going to be probably Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, East Tennessee, Pennsylvania, Maine, New York, even Florida, even though it's more further south. But I remember telling my manager the other day, I was like, Dan, I don't care what I got to do. We got to get to Chicago. Got to find a place in Chicago to play, because I just always wanted to do that. It's like a bucket list thing. I don't care if I play for the Wall. You know what I mean? So
there are plenty of places to play in Chicago. There's plenty of places. At least there was.
I couldn't name one venue. I couldn't name one venue in Chicago. I have no idea. I just know that I've met a lot of artists that have come down here and played. At the Keys Lounge, the blues jam that happens down there. I've met a few artists from Chicago, and damn, Chicago blues just has this style. It's got its own thing. You just know it. Once you know, and it's there, and you just hear it and go, yeah, that dude's from Chicago. I mean, you could do it blind. It's kind of like when you know you're listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan. You're like, oh yeah, that's 2.5 step down, and he's rocking that G string. That's Stevie Ray.
Look into playing at this place called Schubas.
Schubas? How do you spell that?
It's SCHUBAS. 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 It's a very small room. Okay. It's a very small room, but it's a cool place.
All right, I'm in for sure. We got a lead up of some stuff in Ohio to go up and do some acoustic shows. So route that right the hell in if they're going to let us in.
Yeah, it's a cool place.
So very cool. Yeah, but man, I see people taking to this, and I'm really excited that people are taking to this song, man. And I just hope that people follow the Spotify and keep following what we're doing, because we're not going to stop. I can't stop. I would go nuts. I tried to walk away from it. I tried to walk away from music altogether. I've done that once, and it does not work. Released a song later part of last year called Into the Dark, an acoustic song, and it's more lyric based than it is music based, and I did a music video for it, etc. And listen to that song and you'll see what I'm saying. A lot of there's a line in there where I say I've met my heroes, but all my heroes have let me down, and there's a lot of truth to that, but that was also why I walked away from music. I thought I gotta get out of here. Maybe this is what's just tearing me down. And it wasn't. It was a thing that was lifting me up. It was everything else that was tearing me down.
Yeah.
And so we're not going anywhere. We're going to keep playing rock and roll. And this is one rock record out of, I hope, 100. You know, we're just going to keep writing and keep doing.
Well, we got to stay in touch, man. You know, I look forward to more music from you. I know the single is out, April 9th?
April 9th, yep.
Yeah. And for all those that are listening.
We don't have a May date yet for the album, but we'll have that in the next 2 weeks.
Awesome. So. Well, Justin, it's been a blast, man. We could have talked for hours, and we'll definitely have you back on the podcast here. So, no, it was a great chat with you.
Awesome, Jay. Thank you so much, buddy, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Justin. Everybody, that's Justin Ross. Look for the new single, Right Back Up, out April 9th. Album forthcoming. Check it out. It's a very, very cool style of music. I'll be playing the song once we release this, probably next week. First week of April. So check that out when it does come out. That's Justin Ross. I'm Jay Scott. This is the Hook Rocks, the Ultimate Rock Community Podcast. Stay strong, stay healthy, stay safe, and we will talk again soon. Thank you.
Here I stand, staring out into the night. Holding on to memories that have slowly passed me by. Taking my chances with this so-called life. Now I step out on a road that I've tried to leave behind. So I'll be run into the night, and I'll be take my heart with me this time. Go follow my footsteps, because I don't know where I'll part. So here I go, there I go, into the dark. 25 years of this guitar has always let me down.